Good evening, everybody. I'm Lou Dobbs. Fox News has just released the first major poll to be taken since Monday's debate. All of the polling, the entire survey after the debate that evening, and Clinton adding only slightly to her lead over Trump in the Fox survey. In the poll of likely voters, Clinton ahead of Trump now by 3 points, 43 to 40% in the four-way matchup. That advantage is within the poll's margin of error. And 2 weeks ago, Clinton was up by 1 point. We'll have more findings from the important Fox News poll here in moments. We'll be going through that with our guests who are experts on this sort of thing and tell us what they think it will lead toward. Also, it turns out that Donald Trump was right to complain about that defective microphone during the debate. The Commission on Presidential Debates, rather reluctantly, rather reticently, finally acknowledging that there was indeed a problem with the microphone. The commission today released an outright cryptic statement saying, quote, regarding the first debate, there were issues regarding Donald Trump's audio that affected the sound level in the debate hall, end quote. Now, that is about as graceless an acknowledgement that they were responsible for a problem that did play a role in the debate. Donald Trump himself addressed the issue at a rally in Michigan this evening.
Working that microphone was a hell of a lot more difficult than working crooked Hillary Clinton, that I can tell you. They just announced, it just came out a little while ago, that the microphone in the auditorium, the big room, was defective. And it was difficult. And you know, when you have a situation like that, and you know it's bad, and you think you have 100 million people watching, what do? Stop the show? Please fix it. It was bad.
And among our guests tonight, senior advisor to the Trump campaign, former Congressman Jack Kingston. Also with us, former presidential candidate, media mogul Steve Forbes, and former UN Ambassador John Bolton. A lot to discuss tonight, including another Obama secret deal to help Iran. New reports that the Obama administration agreed to back the lifting of UN sanctions against 2 Iranian banks that had been blacklisted for bankrolling Iran's ballistic missile program. And that deal was finalized on the same day in January that Iran released 4 American hostages. Is it just another coincidence that President Obama lifted the sanctions on the same day the hostages were released, or were they plainly part of the ransom package? We take that up here tonight, a great deal more. Our top story, Fox News poll showing Hillary Clinton did receive a post-debate bounce in a head-up race. Clinton now up 5 points. Trump ahead by 1 point in early September. Trump is leading Clinton on 2 critical issues. More believe Trump will better address corruption in our government. Likely voters also trust Trump to do a much better job on the economy. Trump is leading with white voters by 21 points. Clinton is ahead with non-whites and voters under the age of 45. Trump up 12 points with all-important independents. The latest Fox polls also show Trump is preferred among men by 17 points, Clinton preferred by women by 20 points. Hillary Clinton's campaign is determined, however, to make this election all about women. In a 3 a.m. tweet this morning, Trump fired back against attacks by former Miss Universe Alicia Machado. He tweeted, quote, wow, crooked Hillary was duped and used by my worst Miss Universe, Miss U. Hillary floated her as an angel without checking her past, which is terrible. The Clinton camp quickly responded, tweeting, what kind of man stays up all night to smear a woman with lies and conspiracy theories? Trump's retort was perfect. He tweeted, quote, for those few people knocking me for tweeting at 3 o'clock in the morning, at least you know I will be there, awake, to answer the call. The problem, of course, is some fear that he might be receiving a tweet. Joining me now, former Republican congressman from Georgia, Jack Kingston. He's now senior advisor to the Trump campaign. Jack, great to have you with us. We appreciate it. And here we go again. a late night, early morning, however you want to describe it, overnight tweet from Mr. Trump, and he gives his opponent a lot of ammunition and fuel to work with.
Well, you know, Lou, I think that when you push Donald Trump, he shows he's going to push back. And I think it's important for people to realize, as compared to the current president who gets pushed around, gets humiliated 2 weeks ago in China, and then what does he do in retaliation? I guess he goes to Laos and calls Americans lazy. But the reality is, I think what Donald Trump just said, and you close with it, was he's out, he's got the stamina, he's awake. You know, being on Twitter is not a big lift. He was in Michigan today. He was in New Hampshire yesterday. He hits the campaign trail hard every single day. He does have stamina. You know, we're still trying to figure out where Hillary Clinton was the night of Benghazi, because we keep hearing, well, I was there, I wasn't there, and I've been in the war rooms before. But, you know, when it's not convenient for her to admit she was in the war room, right, then she says she wasn't there. So,
you know, there's no
he's
question,
a guy with
Jack,
a lot of energy.
There's no question that he's going to be there. He is strong, has stamina. He has a greater force. I mean, he's a force of nature, in point of fact. I talk about a strong personality. That's an understatement. But there is a sense of proportionality here. There is constraint at issue here. There is, no matter how much the Trump campaign wants to deny it, there has to be the exhibited and manifest without question, temperament to be president of the United States, knowing what is proportionate, knowing how to make that judgment, and how to not give your enemy any kind of advantage whatsoever in whether it's a retort or a reaction. Would you not agree?
Well, you know, I think what happens is...
That's a no or a yes?
Well, when you come from the private sector, I agree with you, but when you come from the private sector, you're just not used to people attacking you, and then those very people being given credibility, because this is not a credible witness at all. This is a woman who signed a contract that said you have to have a certain way.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, Jack, I don't even want to talk about her. I mean, the fact is that the surrogates want to talk about her. I get it. But Donald Trump talking about it, I don't think his most ardent supporters, and I am certainly among them, don't want to hear it from him. I want the issues that has gotten him here. I want his, if he's going to exhibit his personality, that force of nature, I want it against the opponents, the ideologies and the nonsense that is constraining the potential of this great country. He's been brilliant on it. Send out Jack Kingston to talk about the doggone Miss Universe if you want to, but what the heck are we doing here?
Well, you know, I think if you look at what he said today in Michigan, 80,000 jobs left after NAFTA and losing the manufacturing
performance
base.
There, no question about it.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking to the right people in the right state to do that. And as you know, one of the things that's really revealing about the poll that you just mentioned is on independent voters, he's 41%, she's 29%, and that number has held steady. And so maybe traditional political followers might say, well, Hillary did better in the debate. Independent voters did not move. They're still critical in those states, the swing states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Colorado.
Yeah. Here's the deal, and I think that's what you're getting to is no matter what, he is the guy that the American people want. Don't give them an excuse not to get you. And that is where guys, by the way, Jack Kingston, I'm telling you right now, how long were you in Congress? 20 years?
22.
22 years. You're the guy I want to talk to as a surrogate from Donald Trump about any number of issues that is, well, frankly, it's not center point for him. He has got to maintain the elevated, the lofty, the critically important, and you all take care of the other. Whatever he and the campaign is, talk to you about, assign you. But it's, I just, and I love the fact that you're out on the campaign trail for him. He picked a doggone good surrogate in you.
Lou, I appreciate that. And I think the one point that he, more than one point that he scored, and it scored it abundantly in the debate, was that, Hillary, you've had 30 years to do all these great, wonderful things, but you haven't done it. We need change. And if the American people believe in this economy with its anemic recovery and 94 million people underemployed or underemployed and 43 million people on food stamps and household income falling from $57,000 to $53,000, then, you know, you want a third term of Hillary Clinton. But if you want change and you want a robust economy, Donald Trump is the candidate.
You know what else I think was a critically important point that he made there, and he does in every one of his appearances? You know, we're so used to being inundated by the first person singular. I, me, my, from Barack Obama. And when Donald Trump is talking, he's talking about us, ours.
He is.
We. And you know what? The American people are going to react to that, and they're loving it. And it may not even be something that some people are conscious of, but it just feels so good to see that change in direction for our country. Congressman, it is always good to see you. Jack Kingston.
All right, Lou, thanks a lot. See you at the next debate.
You got a deal. Thanks so much. We're coming right back. We've got a lot more. So please stay with us. We're coming right back. Joining me now, the executive editor of the Weekly Standard, Fox News contributor Fred Barnes. Why isn't she 50 points ahead again, Fred? I can't quite make it out.
That's a great ad. I mean, she comes across as shrill, of course, and screeching, and it's a very, very effective ad, and explains why she's not 50 points ahead. You know, she may be 3 or 4 points ahead, but that's a very well done ad, and people will remember that. You know, when she is there screaming about why am I not 50 points ahead? Very effective.
And rodeo queens, the reporting of the Weekly Standard, Jack Palladino, investigator, assigned by Hillary Clinton. My gosh.
Well, these are things that were known some years ago, and now they're sort of forgotten, and the mainstream media doesn't want to report on these things. But the truth is, Hillary Clinton was a leader in the effort to intimidate and silence the women with whom her husband had sexual relations. And there were
now, is she the one who came up with this rodeo queens to refer to the bimbos as?
She called some of them that, and but she was not just this poor, wronged wife who was sitting at home while her husband was out running around. No, I mean, she led this effort. She hired Jack Palladino, the guy who was a private eye, who was a thug, to help go
one of the most notorious
women.
PIs in the country's history.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole effort was to intimidate these women into silence, and it was largely successful. But it wasn't that Hillary was not involved in it. She was, in many ways, in charge of it.
And the debate microphone. Finally, the commission acknowledges it was a mess.
Well, it was a mess, particularly, I guess, if you were in the hall.
Especially if your name is Donald Trump and you were trying to use it.
It had to be distracting to Trump, no question about that. If you're talking and it's not getting through, because the people, you don't know what the home audience on television is, how they're responding, but you do care about the audience in the auditorium.
And the New York Times, Ohio's no longer a big, important battleground state because Trump is winning it. What in the world?
He is winning it, and of course that's a must state for him. And what it means is he can take some of his resources out of Ohio and put them in Pennsylvania and Florida, states that he also needs to win. So it's a good thing for him.
And Donald Trump right now, focusing on the issues, he's got all of the issues, and his, excuse me, I have got these hiccups I cannot get rid of. I got so excited, I guess. It's incredible. And he's got nearly every issue in his favor.
He does, but the Fox poll showed that Hillary was by a small margin preferred by Americans to handle the issues of immigration, terrorism, and crime. Those are Trump's issues. He needs to hammer away at those day after day after day, and not hammer away at some beauty queen that he is unhappy with. That's a mistake. He needs to focus on these issues. They're his issues. They are winning issues. And he can win if he sticks to them and doesn't wander off on these other things. The Fox poll was very revealing about this.
And it's great that he was hammering James Comey, the director of the FBI, who, in my opinion, needs to resign. I mean, it's embarrassing what he has done to that storied agency.
Well, if Trump wins, he's obviously going to be fired. I mean, there's so many questions that are still unanswered about how Hillary did all these things. And 5 of the people who work for her got immunity, and yet immunity is usually given to somebody because then they're going to tell you what really happened. Well, that's not what they did, and Hillary has escaped.
Yeah, and Congress made it clear what an outrage the way he performed. It was sophomoric. It was obviously, clearly, he was in the tank.
I'd still like to see Hillary asked, and maybe somebody will ask it in this second debate, since you have citizens asking some of the questions, ask her why, if everything that you did with your emails, there was nothing illegal, why did 5 of your aides need immunity from prosecution?
Her top aides as well. Fred, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it as always. Fred Barnes. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Would you prefer that Donald Trump create a no-tweet zone between the hours of midnight, say, and 8 a.m.? He seems to get into a little bit of kerfuffle when he's tweeting at that hour. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Again, I apologize for this. I have never had this happen to me, and I'm sure that, like me, you were a little annoyed with me, but there it is. A few thoughts now on the mainstream liberal media and left-wing organizations that are out in force trying to take down Donald Trump. The latest efforts coming from, of all places, the United Nations official news service that put out a tweet calling for, quote, 8 million Americans abroad to end Trump. That tweet scrubbed some 20 minutes later with the agency saying it's investigating the cause, which means, by the way, the agency didn't have the guts to admit who in the agency sent it out. But that's not the only left-wing organization taking aim at Trump, of course. One of the usual sources, the New York Times, today actually declared the state of Ohio to no longer be a bellwether battleground state, claiming it's fading on the electoral map after deeming it all important just back in July. But Trump wasn't leading then, and he is now. No candidate has ever won the White House without Ohio since 1960. And Trump is leading in the state, according to the Real Clear Politics average, and has for some time. But the Republican nominee today took note that increasingly there's a price for the left-wing media to be taking Hillary's side in this campaign. Trump pointed out that USA Today for the first time took sides in the election, siding, of course, with Hillary. And Trump tweeted this, quote, "The people are really smart in canceling subscriptions to the Dallas and Arizona papers, and now USA Today will lose readers. The people get it." Trump's running mate, Governor Mike Pence, also took aim at the liberal media.
The media and the Democrats, they seem helpless to figure him out. He said this, he tweeted that. They think they finally got him right where they want him, and then they turn on the TV the next morning, and Donald Trump is still standing strong, fighting for the American people.
You know, Pence is a pretty good fighter himself, and he is taking care of the man. The left-wing media doesn't seem to understand their editorializing is just purely wasted energy, that their audience is not only not paying attention to them, but an increasing number of them are dropping their subscriptions and no longer paying for the left's elitist, establishment, globalist view of our country, our politics, and indeed the globe. In other words, the left has quite inadvertently proved that free enterprise markets work, and that if unfettered by authoritarian so-called political correctness, the marketplace of ideas in this country will work for all of us. And that's what Donald Trump is all about, right? Now our quotation of the evening, this one from Thomas Sowell. He said, "If you have always believed that everyone should play by the same rules and be judged by the same standards, that would have gotten you labeled a radical 60 years ago, a liberal 30 years ago, and a racist today. Times do change. Good people don't. We're coming right back. Wells Fargo's embattled CEO stands to walk away from the bank with a huge payday if he does leave. John Stumpf is set to collect pension accounts and stock valued at more than $134 million, despite a $41 million clawback, according to compensation consulting firm Equilar. Both Republicans and Democratic lawmakers have called on Stumpf to resign over the bank's massive fraud scandal. And by the way, only 5,300 people were fired at Wells Fargo because of it. Joining me now, former presidential candidate, Forbes media chairman, editor-in-chief, Steve Forbes. Steve, great to have you here. We got a lot to talk about. 2 hearings already. Stumpf, do you think he ought to resign?
I think he'll be resigned. And he said that's up to the board of directors. That's code for the government regulators. Are not going to let me stay on this thing for long. So it's just a matter of time, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the election, before the election.
Where's the Fed been in all of this? The control of the currency has been in it, other regulators, but the Fed hasn't had a word to say. I think this is some of the most disgraceful conduct I've ever seen. 5,300 people creating accounts, putting people's names on credit cards. I mean, what in the world was John Stumpf and that board of directors thinking to permit that culture to be created?
Well, the real thing is, why didn't their internal controls flag that thing and then deal with it? You can't have 5,300 people doing something and not have somebody up the chain know about it.
Exactly. You and I and a lot of folks out there know. This stuff doesn't happen without senior management being wired into it.
And if they weren't, which is hard to believe, why wasn't something done about it? And so that's how you got one clawback. I think there'll be other clawbacks before this thing is over.
I think I would suggest they claw like hell, because the regulators are going to be on them.
Well, this is where the board of directors should say, all right, let's stay ahead of the curve.
Well, it's odd that you mentioned that, because there's a fellow by the name of Warren Buffett who owns 10% of the stock and is ably represented, I'm sure, throughout the organization. He once said that he would be absolutely furious if someone damages his reputation. He can put up with a business mistake, but not one of character. He's been absent in this. He was refused to comment and to call for Stumpf's resignation or insist upon it in public.
I think, again, in the next week or two, Stumpf is going to have opportunities to pursue new activities. And if he's a golfer, he'll be able to polish up his game, and you will get more clawbacks. Because it's one thing if you make a mistake. If you're in business, if you don't make mistakes, you're not trying, like baseball. But if you
but if you cheat, you're a cheater.
And so that nullifies what an agreement. I mean, that's...
Well, it's time for corporate America to understand that they're contributing to the culture of corruption in this country. This should be a matter of accountability. There should be forfeiture here, clawback. Hell, he ought to be forfeiting stock. He ought to be forfeiting his pension. This, people get fired in that bank, 5,300 of them. Are you kidding? And he sits there and acts like he's an arrogant SO. Well, whatever.
Yes.
I'll let you finish
well, maybe he and
acronym.
Maybe he and Mr. Comey could start a firm together.
Yeah. By the way, you agree? Comey should be gone.
I think he will be in the next administration.
Well, I don't know why anybody should wait. This is a man who stood up and acted like he was the paragon of virtue, and he's obviously in the tank.
Well, who's president?
Well, I know who's president.
Who's the attorney general?
Who's the attorney general? Who's been the attorney general? Look at all of this mess, and look at the Clinton cartel and the web of corruption that is extended over 3 decades and permeates this administration as well.
That's why you cannot count Trump out. People hear this stuff.
Who the hell wants to turn? I think he's in.
Yeah, but people just are disgusted everywhere they go. They see that
you can't get Paul Ryan to rise up on his haunches and say the hell with these fools, because he, for some reason, thinks that there is room in Washington for corruption, because she is the emblem of it, and every person who doesn't stand behind Trump is absolutely validating a culture of corruption in our nation's capital. Do you not agree?
Well, calling for Comey's resignation, I think Gowdy and others.
Do you agree with what I just said?
You don't have to back Trump to be against corruption.
Well,
I'm supporting Trump.
Yeah, you do, because if you don't, you're endorsing Hillary without a question, right?
On that, well, let's put it this way.
This is a very simple deal. If we go through the syllogism, she leads the corruption of the Clinton cartel in Washington and has for decades. Well, she benefits if you don't vote or you vote for someone other than Donald Trump. If you vote for Trump, you vote against corruption. Does the syllogism hold up?
For you and me, yes.
Okay. And with that, we have reached firm agreement here. And by the way, I've got to tell you,
Ryan has endorsed Trump, maybe not with the enthusiasm some would like, but he did do it, unlike the governor of Ohio.
Yeah, well, I don't even know the name of that fellow in Ohio. Do you? Steve, it's always great to have you here. Thanks so much for, as always,
good to be with you.
Being a good sport and a great American.
And with the Yankees, wait till next year.
Yes. I wasn't going to even mention the word. I do want to point out to all of you who've been watching me here tonight, as I struggled with hiccups. I very seldom get hiccups, but I had a terrible case of them. I wanted to share with you some of the the panaceas that my colleagues provided me. Hold your breath, I did that. Deep breaths, I did that. Sugar on my tongue, I did that. I also had a spoonful of peanut butter placed firmly on my tongue, which I held in place for as long as I could stand it before just being so taken and enamored with peanut butter that I had to have it. And oh yes, I drank water. I drank a lot of water. It appears to work, but I've done so much I can't tell you which worked. But those are the things I tried.
You should have tried looking at a picture of Hillary. That would have done it.
Oh my gosh.
Why didn't you think of that?
Why didn't I think of that? I don't like to think of that. But Steve, I think that probably would have been helpful too. Thanks so much, Steve. Joining me now, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations American Enterprise Institute, Senior Fellow, Great American, John Bolton, and also Fox News contributor. Ambassador, great to have you with us.
Glad to be with you.
We learned that on top of everything else, the Obama administration violated the terms of its agreement in favor of Iran and lifted sanctions against 2 Iranian banks that have been blacklisted for their support of the ballistic missile program. And did so, but only, 7.5 years early. I mean, you can't even imagine the kind of nonsense that comes up under this administration.
Well, it's one more secret aspect of this overall nuclear agreement. They didn't make public. They didn't tell Congress until they basically were forced to, and leads to the question, what else is out there? But it shows, I think, as graphically as anything, that Obama would have paid any price to get this deal. And the Ayatollahs were squeezing him right up to the end. The State Department today made the ludicrous comment that they could basically determine that the banks in question had not been involved in ballistic missile finance for the past several years. Thank God we had that Treasury Department office opened in Tehran so they could audit the bank's books, right? I mean, this is the kind of cover-up, really, that ought to be the subject of the next presidential debate. Hillary Clinton supports this Iran deal. We ought to say, does she support the cash for hostages aspect? Does she support the waivers of the sanctions? Does she support the continued effort, as Paul Ryan himself said, that John Kerry acts like he's the president of the Tehran Chamber of Commerce? Let's have the American people listen to that for a while.
Yeah, I don't often give Ryan credit for good wordsmithing, but that was terrific and good stuff. He also said today that Obama owes an immediate explanation for what he's done to the American people, to the Congress, and the madness goes on. By the way, the madness goes to the point that Hillary Clinton lobs massive refugee in-migration, unvetted, and loves the leadership of Angela Merkel, who will probably be remembered as the woman who was the catalyst to the destruction of the European Union.
Yeah, I think this is, although she thought she was taking a shot at Trump and maybe Gary Johnson, who couldn't remember any world leaders he liked. In fact, I think, as you suggest, she's putting this refugee question, this migration question, right out there for Trump to go after. I mean, I think Americans who followed what happened in Germany and what they've seen what's happened across Europe, this is exactly what they fear. So if this is the prelude to a real discussion about terrorists using refugee flows to infiltrate Western Europe and the United States, the danger of cultures that don't want to be assimilated. In the American tradition of the melting pot, they affirmatively reject it. If that's the sort of thing she supports, let's talk about it.
Right. Ambassador, and as you talk about that, Donald Trump points out he likes Angela Merkel, but reserves his, with the reservation that what she's done in terms of the refugees and illegal immigrants and open borders is horrific. And again, demonstrates he's on the right side of history on every one of the issues that he has driven in this debate to this point. Would you agree?
Well, I think on Merkel, he's absolutely right, and the threat of terrorist activity in Europe is only going to pick up as more ISIS people come in through the refugee flow. They're coming into this country, too. That's why the southern border question is not just about illegal immigrants. It's about national security. National security,
and also the security of our society and the victims of addiction and the majority of the drugs that cross that border, that is methamphetamines, marijuana, heroin, and cocaine, the majority of which comes across that wide open border.
Exactly.
And for some reason, those advocates, including Hillary Clinton, don't seem to want to talk about that. Ambassador John Bolton, great to see you as always.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you. Well, if you're in the market for a political bumper sticker, we had one for you. This one is, I thought it was pretty good. It says Benghazi. The H is silent. I'm sorry, I could not resist that. Up next, Donald Trump says the Clinton campaign and liberal left-wing media are panicking. We'll pick it up with Ned Ryan and Tammy Bruce here next. In our online poll last night, we asked, do you think any presidential candidate who's an FBI certified liar who admittedly mishandled classified information and extremely carelessly so did, who lied about Benghazi and who threatened Bill Clinton's accusers should be even considered for the presidency? 97% of you said no. Well, that makes it just about unanimous. Joining me now, founder and CEO of American Majority, former presidential writer for George W. Bush, Ned Ryan. Ned, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you. And Washington Times columnist, radio host, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce. Thank you both for being here. Let's start with these ads. Trump's attacks on Clinton, do you think they're working?
I do. I think they're very impressive. It's a very nice structure. His main goal has got to be to remind the American people the corruption of that woman, her nature, her very nature, which will never change. And regardless of whatever happens in debates or even at the rallies, those ads set that in motion.
I have to smile, Tammy, because I think every time Mr. Trump speaks, he says, lying, crooked Hillary. I think he's doing pretty good on that, Ned. I've got to ask you about the New York Times. Suddenly, they've decided that because Donald Trump's up in Ohio, the critical swing state, it's no longer a bellwether of any kind in this election with him ahead.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, here's the case, Lou. I think it's still an important state for Trump. He has to win it. I think Clinton could probably get away with not winning, but it's vital for Trump to win. But the good news is, you know, Portman's running 13 points ahead in the Senate race, and I think in some ways he's going to have reverse coattails. But going back to what Tammy was saying about those ads and about the message from now.
Did you work for George W. Bush? Just remind me. I heard a little George W. in that.
Little George W. in the reverse coattails?
Yeah, I did. I did.
But really quick, Lou, I mean, last point here really quick that I want to make is Trump needs to be hammering on this issue of trustworthiness and honesty. 2 weeks ago, he was up double digits on Hillary, and the recent Fox poll now shows her up 4 or 5 points. So these ads and the next 2 debates, he has to hammer on the FBI, the Clinton Foundation, email, servers, all these things, just to remind people this woman is not trustworthy. She is not an honest person. She's not qualified to be president.
Yeah. The Clinton cartel, suddenly, the national liberal media, which never wants to confront the reality before them, that they're looking at decades of corruption and an expansive enterprise from the Clinton Foundation to the Secretary's State Department to this administration's FBI.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everywhere.
Well, and especially now we've got a generation of people voting who understand the seriousness of what's happening on Earth and here with terrorism, and who maybe just don't know about Hillary Clinton's past at all. We do, of course, but you've got, you know, a generation of voters who are thinking, wait a minute, what's this woman been doing? It's Mr. Trump's responsibility to make sure they know. He cares about the country. Yes, he wants to be president, but he must win this first battle of winning the election. He must win it.
And he has moved in that direction solidly and directly. He is right at the cusp, that I believe, of sealing the deal, if you will. He's got 2 more debates, obviously. Mike Pence, his debate with Tim Kaine. What should we expect in your view?
Well, you know, my hope is that Pence is going to turn the debate Monday night into really a referendum, or Tuesday night, excuse me, and really go after Clinton's record and really remind people of who Hillary is. And I hope that Trump in the next 2 debates, I hope he memorizes 5 or 6 words before the next 2 debates. FBI, foundation, growth, wall, and just continues to hit those points time and time again. The good news is, Lou, I think voters have a short-term memory. I don't think the first debate's going to ultimately hurt him that much if he can perform well in the next 2 debates.
Yeah, I mean, for crying out loud, Obama lost the first debate, and it was terrible. I'm not saying, by the way, that Donald Trump lost that debate. I'm just saying Obama did. You get last wrap-up word here.
Well, look, I think he's fine. I think he's going to win Florida. He's going to win Ohio. People understand who he is. He's winning because of who he is. It's just a matter of continuing to do what he's doing, which is being honest with the American people, handling it well, caring about this nation. And he's got it.
The right man in the right place on the right side of history.
Exactly.
Ned Ryan, thank you. Tammy Bruce,
thank
you. We appreciate it, guys. And we want you to know September is National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. It's personal to me. One of my former producers, Clay Owen, and his wife, Grania, lost their son, Killian, to leukemia. If you want to join the fight, consider donating to 3 organizations that we recommend to you. CuringKidsCancer.org, SilentNightFoundation.org, and RoomForLove.org. The names on your screen and on our website. We thank you for being with us. Joining us Monday, Ed Rollins, Michael Goodwin, Governor Huckabee. Please be with us. Have a great weekend. Good night.